Okay, so what we have here is wild carrot, Daucus carota, and we're going to talk through the ID on it. There are actually 7 species of Daucus in Israel. This one is by far the most common. This is Daucus carota subspecies maximus, and if you look at the size of it, well, let's just say if you're at all familiar with the Daucus carota that is called Queen Anne's lace and grows in North America and Europe, you know that the flowers rarely get this big. So the subspecies maximus refers to that. Okay, so what am I looking for? Note the leaves. Okay. Feathery, divided, and hairy. Really important. Remember that. You can feel it with your fingers. The whole plant is hairy, and if I crush it up and smell it, smells carroty, basically. The poisonous lookalikes do not have hairs and do not have that carroty smell. The flowers have very distinctive pointy bracts underneath. Can you see these pointy bracts under there? They are in umbels of little white florets, and sometimes, but not always, with that single dark floret, or sometimes a couple of florets, a few florets in the center. So you can see, I'm sticking my thumb on it here, the dark floret in the center, but you shouldn't use that as your only ID factor. It's true, the poisonous lookalikes do not have that dark central floret, but the perfect time to harvest the roots of this plant is before it has a flower, so that will not help you with the ID. And it doesn't always have those purple florets. Let me see if I can find one for you. Yeah, here's one. Sometimes you'll have a wild carrot that does not have the dark purple floret in the center. So that, if it does have it, it is definitely wild carrot, but don't count on it always having that. The hairy stems, can you see the hairs there? Fuzzy, fuzzy, fuzzy. On the flower stalks, but even before that on the leaf stalks, are super important to your ID. Okay, so what can we do with wild carrot, also commonly called Queen Anne's lace? I want to tell the story of that. You see that central dark floret in the middle of the white umbel? Legend had it that Queen Anne was sewing some lace and she pricked her finger and it bled, and that's that little dot there in the middle. That's where that Queen Anne's lace name comes from. Anyway, this plant has at least 5 edible parts and some medicinal uses, so let's dive into it. One, obviously it's a carrot, the root, but the carrot that you will find, the taproot that you will find on this plant, is actually not orange, for starters, even though it is the same species that was eventually bred into the orange carrot we know. It has a similar taste and aroma, but it's off-white and usually pretty fibrous. So I use it as a flavoring for soup stocks. I use it grated or pulsed in a food processor really finely to make like carrot bread, but that's about it. It's actually the least interesting edible part of wild carrot is the root. It's not the best part. Then you have the leaves. Let's see if I can get down in here on these nice little feathery leaves. Okay, they have a taste kind of somewhere between dill and fennel. And by the way, you can also use cultivated carrot leaves like this. It's not really a vegetable, it's more of a seasoning, but quite tasty. And then we're a little past this stage right now, but when the plant starts sending up these flower stalks, but before the flowers actually open, you can take the stems and peel off the hairy outsides, and they're actually a little bit sweet and crunchy and juicy and wonderful at that stage, at raw or cooked. At this stage, when the plant is already flowering, the stems are going to be too tough and stringy to really enjoy, and the flower itself is what I would be harvesting, am harvesting. It can be thrown into pickles, like you know how you put dill flower heads sometimes into pickles. Well, wild carrot flower heads are a wonderful flavoring for pretty much any kind of pickle, vinegar or fermented. I have a friend who makes jelly with them, and that taste is also very interesting. But again, more as a seasoning than an actual vegetable. All right, and then this is a nice example right here. You see where this flower head is starting to curl up onto itself. I've read this described as a bird's nest. This is the beginning of what will be the seed head. And the seed head itself, the seeds, here are some little baby ones starting to form. Once they're at the perfect stage for using them as a culinary seasoning is when they're just starting to turn brown but still have a little tiny bit of green in them. That's their most flavorful. And again, somewhere like a cross between dill and fennel seeds. I use them in curries, again in pickles. There is a caveat though about the seeds. The entire plant, leaves, flowers, root, everything, is considered a digestive aid, but the seeds also have an additional property of the more mature seeds than this, that they have been used as a sort of birth control, effectively a morning after or Plan B pill, that if ingested after unprotected sex, they prevent a fertilized egg from attaching to the uteral lining. And in fact, when the morning after pill, which is now synthesized, was first being researched, they were working with some of the compounds found in this plant. So probably not one for you if you are trying to become pregnant or are pregnant. All the other parts of the plant are so mild it wouldn't be an issue, but good to know that about the seeds. It's important to talk about the fact that Daucus carota wild carrot is a biennial. That will tell you when you can harvest which parts and when not to even bother trying to find them. So there are annual plants that do their whole life cycle from sprouting to flowering to going to seed and dying in one growing season. There are perennials that can live for 3 years or more, or 2 years or more. And then there are biennials, which sounds like it would be 2 years, bi-2-ennial year. But actually most biennial plants, including wild carrot, only live for 12 months, 1 year. The biennial part is that they cross over our human calendar. So wild carrot is flowering now. It will go to seed, and in the fall those seeds will be on the ground. The rainy season will start, they'll sprout. They will exist for the next many months just as leaves, no flower stalks. And then next year, 2021, they will shoot up flowering stalks and go to seed and repeat cycle. So it's the biennial part is the fact that they will cross from 2020 to 2021, not that they're going to live for 24 months. What does this mean to you? Right now is not the time to harvest the roots. The roots are at their best when the plant only has leaf rosettes and no flower stalks. And that's finished already. The plants are flowering. So don't bother digging up the roots now. They'll be woody and just not good. Now is the time for the flowers. We already passed the time for the stalks. The leaves is kind of any time, so that's fine. And the seed time is not started yet, but the seed time will be coming soon for that harvest. All right. Then in the fall, you can start looking for those new first year so-called leaf rosettes, and that's the best time to harvest the roots. And just to wrap up, a reminder that the hairiness of wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace is one of the most important ID factors that you can learn, and the mnemonic for that I learned is just remember, the queen has hairy legs.